Oh, hey Bio20s. I'm going to slow things down for you here. We're going to continue on with the immune system, and we're going to talk about the third line of immune response. So, first two lines of defense, we had number one, your body, fortress with my Game of Thrones analogy, keeping things out of your body. Number two line of defense is your non-specific response still. This is going to be your macrophages, your leukocytes. This can include a fever as well, just trying to take care of any type of problem that may have gotten into your blood. And that would be, my analogy again, your dragons, your soldiers, your armies essentially. Now we're getting to the third line of defense, which is essentially your T cells and your B cells. Very specific white blood cells, so they are your main characters. Your Jon Snows, your Starks, your Daenerys's. These are the main characters of the TV show or whatever movie, whatever we're talking about. And they're the main characters of your immune response. So let's talk about what they do. So, in terms of your third line of defense, if the invader gets into your blood, not only will you have your second line of defense, we're going to move to our third line of defense as well. Foreign organisms have special markers on them. So a foreign marker we would refer to as a foreign antigen, right? So just like your blood cells have antigens which tell it's A, B, or O. O, remember, doesn't have any markers. Invaders have markers on their outer walls as well, right? So when your body notices, hey, that's a foreign antigen, we've never seen that before, your body will start to, one, try and figure out what it is, and two, decide how to deal with it, whether that make antibodies, whether it be call certain types of white blood cells into action. So when a foreign invader with a foreign marker, a foreign antigen gets into your body, your third line of defense gets to work. So we're going to talk about T cells and B cells. So we're going to think of lymphocytes, antibody, antigens, all in the same breath, right? And it involves T cells and B cells. So both T cells and B cells are made in your bone marrow, like I showed you in our first video for chapter 11. They're all made in your bone marrow. But this is where they kind of differ. So B cells will stay there and mature and become specialized B lymphocytes, whereas T cells will go all the way to your thymus gland, and your thymus gland, right about here, your thymus gland will be a place where these cells will mature. It's almost like cell school, if you want to think of it like that. So now the T cells will become certain types of T cells, helper T cells, killer T cells, suppressor T cells. They're going to turn into various types of T cells within your thymus gland. And they do a few things. They identify foreign invaders, they help attack foreign invaders, they help make antibodies against foreign invaders. So all of these B cells and these T cells have a certain job, a certain task, and they all work together like a team to fight off whatever is infecting you. So let's talk about the helper T cells first. So this is our first type of specific T cell in our body. All right, what do the helper T cells do? Well, they are the ones that actually read the antigen shape. So they're going to go along and they're going to look at the shape of that foreign invader and look at their antigens and be like, oh, I've never seen that before. Or they're going to be like, I have seen that before. And that's where immunity comes into play. They're going to release a chemical message, which is going to send all the way to your B cells. B cells will immediately start cloning themselves. So T cells send a message to B cells clone themselves and start producing a bunch of antibodies, all right? B cells will then enter into the circulatory system with their antibodies attached to their cell membrane. So the B cell, their job is real simple, right? Once again, they're made in the bone marrow, and they multiply like crazy when they get their signal, and they make antibodies. Antibodies that are specific for whatever is making you sick, whether it's a virus, whether it's a bacteria, whether it's a parasite, whether it's whatever it ends up being. So, antibodies are generally Y-shaped proteins that have a specific shape that are complementary to a single antigen. So they're only going to work against a very specific antigen. So this is why flus and certain viruses in general are difficult to deal with, because they mutate all the time and they change the shape of their antigen, so our antibodies don't work anymore. So this is why we require a flu shot every year, because the flu mutates and changes. so that even if you got the flu last year, you still might get it again the following year because of this problem. Now, they're unsure if the coronavirus does this. There's been some research that maybe it's mutating. Others say that maybe the mutation rate is slow. We as humans are hoping for a slow mutation rate because that means when a vaccine finally does come, it would last a little bit longer as opposed to having to get a coronavirus shot every single year. So if the mutation rate is a little slower, that would be a good thing because then our treatments would last longer, right? And if you did develop antibodies and have immunity, they would last longer, which would be a good thing. So the antigen-antibody complex, what happens is essentially these antibodies, these Y-shaped things, will attach to the antigens. And then they help immobilize that virus or that pathogen, and then make it easier for the macrophages to come along and suck it up and destroy it. So the antibodies kind of just stick to the outer walls, immobilize it, prevent it from infecting other cells, and then allowing the macrophages to destroy it. Okay, so moving along here. Whoops. Cell membranes, they have receptor sites for hormones and other materials. Antibodies will interfere with the attachment of toxins to the cell membrane, and this will essentially neutralize these harmful invaders. So this means a virus can't attach and can't infect your cells. So this is a good thing. Next, we have our killer T cells. The helper T cells will not only send a signal to the B cells, they will also send a signal to the killer T cells. Now, they have a really cool name because what they do is they come along and they look at, say, infected cells, like cancer cells or cells that are infected with a virus. They come along, start puncturing holes in the cell membrane. So then all the cytoplasm leaks out, and they essentially kill all of the infected or bad cells in your body. So that's really cool that the killer T cells will come along, start puncturing holes, and start destroying any infected cell that might be present. Then we have our suppressor T cells. They come along, and once the battle is over, they come along and say, all right, we won, we're good, let's turn off the immune response. So they shut it all down. Because you don't want your immune response constantly going, because then you might start attacking good cells, or you might start attacking harmless things, and that's how we get allergies or autoimmune disorders. So the suppressor T cells come in, and they turn off the immune response. So we have our helper T cells signaling, we have our B cells making antibodies, we have our killer T cells destroying infected or dangerous cancerous cells, and then we have our suppressor T cells turning off the immune response. We have one more cell to talk about. So, the communication between helper T cells and suppressor T cells, it's essential because it makes sure we have adequate number of antibodies to make sure that we have enough to fight off the infection, and also to make sure that once the battle is over, the macrophages and the leukocytes come in and they clean up any mess. So dead or injured B and T cells, we get rid of them, we remove them, and get those out of the way as well. The last cell I want to talk about are the memory B cells. And this is what leads into the idea of a vaccine or immunity. After the fight is done, memory B cells come along and they remember the shape of the antigen. So they remember the shape of, say, chickenpox. So you get chickenpox, you get the chickenpox, it's itchy, it's not fun, you fight off the chickenpox. Chances are you're not going to get chickenpox again, because if you're exposed to chickenpox, your body knows what it looks like. It already has a memory or a stored bank of antibodies, so the response is much quicker. T cells come along, say, hey, we've seen this before, because the memory B cells stored information on that invader. So then when you get chickenpox a second time, boom, antibodies are ready to go. You don't have to manufacture brand new ones. Your body knows how to beat it, and you beat off the virus or the pathogen before you even show symptoms. And that's how we build up immunity, right? That's one way to build up immunity, is to get the virus and then make antibodies and have them stored ready to go. Like I said though, viruses can change and mutate. So just because you got the flu, right, doesn't mean you're never going to get the flu again. Because certain viruses can change their shape and change the shape of their antigens. Now, this leads into vaccines. How does a vaccine work? Essentially what a vaccine is it's a dead version of a virus, most of them. So it's a dead version of a virus, or they basically chop up the virus and put it in a little blender, and then you inject it into somebody. and the body produces antibodies because they've seen that marker. So now you have immunity to something you haven't even caught before. And that's why this coronavirus vaccine is so important, because if people can get this vaccine, they would be immune to it before they even catch it. And hopefully you wouldn't have to deal with the symptoms and the severe symptoms that some people face. So that's why a vaccine is so important. You get a weakened version or a dead version of the virus. Your body is then able to essentially have a practice round building up those antibodies, so that when you see the real thing, you're prepared and you can fight it off and be immune to it. So that's really, really important, okay? Lots of cool vaccine research going on right now. A lot of different types of vaccines they're looking at, maybe some that will interfere with how the virus attaches to our cells. Some will actually get into the DNA of the virus and mess around with that. So there's a lot of vaccines out there. When it comes out, your guess is as good as mine, but I'm really hoping sooner than later. So that's essentially how your immune system works. To end here, I just quickly want to talk about what happens when your immune system makes mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes and your immune system is no different. So what happens if your immune system makes a mistake? Well, there's two mistakes an immune system can make. There's immunodeficiency disease, where you essentially have a foreign agent, maybe HIV, coming in and destroying your immune system. So your immune system will come along and it won't be able to fight properly because it's been compromised. So best example of this is HIV. The HIV virus comes in, it attacks your helper T cells. So now your helper T cells can't send a signal to the B cells, the killer T cells, and the suppressor T cells. You've essentially shut off that communication within your immune system. Without the helper T cells, the virus goes like crazy, eventually becoming the AIDS virus. And it's not HIV or AIDS that eventually would kill you. It would be another, say, pneumonia or just even the common cold, because it essentially just shuts down your immune system, right? It just cripples your immune system. So that's a problem that your immune system faces. And then it can't do its job properly because it's been weakened. Or sometimes the immune system will attack harmless agents like an allergy or your cells themselves. So, for example, allergies. What are allergies? An allergy is just when the immune system makes a mistake. So it sees something like pollen or peanuts or strawberries, and it treats it as if it was a harmful pathogen. So then it goes through the whole immune response, right? The swelling and the attacking and all of it against this harmful thing. So now you start sneezing, you get hives, you get watery eyes. In severe cases, you might even go into anaphylactic shock. And you may have heard of, okay, if you take allergy medication, you take antihistamines. It's because when cells are believed that they're endangered and they need to attack whatever is getting them, they release the chemical histamine. And histamine will cause an increase in blood flow to the area. It causes increased white blood cell. It causes an allergic reaction, essentially. So if you take an antihistamine and block the histamine signal, you'll hopefully reduce some of those symptoms. So you'll reduce the sneezing and the swelling and the itchiness and the watery eyes and things like that. Now, like I mentioned before, allergies can be quite harmful if you go into, say, an anaphylactic reaction. This involves your respiratory and your circulatory system, where your lungs and your air pathways might even swell and close up, which is really, really dangerous. So if that's the case, you would have, say, an EpiPen on site to open things up and hopefully deal with those severe reactions. So those are allergies. Essentially, it's your immune system making a mistake. Last thing I want to talk about are autoimmune disorders. This is where your body attacks its own cells. So it makes another mistake, but this time it's attacking its own cells. So for example, rheumatoid arthritis is when the immune system attacks your joints. It attacks the connective tissue within your joints. So without the ligaments and the connective tissue, you essentially have bone on bone, and that's what arthritis is. It's not very fun. So rheumatoid arthritis is caused by your immune system making a mistake and starting to attack its own connective tissue. Another type of autoimmune disease is type 1 diabetes. Your immune system can attack the insulin-producing cells of the pancreas, so you no longer produce adequate insulin. And because of this, your blood sugar goes up quite a bit, and you have to manage it through artificial insulin shots and things like that. And finally, we have multiple sclerosis, or MS. This is where your cells attack the myelin covering of your nerve cells. So nerve cells have this special covering called myelin, which allows them to send signals faster. When this covering is damaged or removed, signals are much slower to send. This is why MS would result in things like issues moving, coordination, and then as it progresses, having problems, say even walking. And this is simply just your immune system attacking your nerve cells, right? Now there are ways to slow these disorders down, but ultimately it's your own system that's attacking itself, which is really troubling. So that's it for chapter 11. We've now learned everything you need to know for the immune system. Coming up, you will have your Unit D exam on Moodle, and then afterwards, we're going to move on to Unit A, which is going to be more the ecology side of things. So we're going to look at biosphere, we're going to look at cycles, and then later on into ecosystems and evolution. So thanks again for watching, and we'll chat soon.